Welcome to our podcast, Not Exactly As We Expected, with me, Christine Capassi, and my husband, Sam Hendrickson.
We have a blended family with 6 kids and 2 dogs, and I've spent our careers in education.
We talk honestly about unexpected things that make up the life we have, even though it might not be the life we thought we'd planned.
We'll share stories and talk to inspiring people who have also lived through some of life's unexpected moments.
Our hope is together we can normalize the experience of being human and more ourselves, with fun along the way. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Not Exactly As We Expected. I'm your host, Christine Capassi. I have with us today my co-host, Sam Hendrickson, and our special guest today, Elsa Zavoda. She is a very, very special guest for us because she was one of the very first special individuals that came into our lives when Sam lost his sight suddenly. Elsa, do you mind starting off just sharing a little bit about what you do and who you are?
Sure. So thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So I am an occupational therapist, as you mentioned. I have been one for 26 years, and I have been specializing in low vision rehabilitation for the past 17 years now. I originally started out in general rehab, and then my passion and interest took me in the direction of low vision rehabilitation. And I went on to pursue a graduate certificate in low vision rehabilitation from University of Alabama at Birmingham in 2007. And then I pursued my certifications and became credentialed as a certified low vision therapist by the Academy for Certification of Vision Rehab Education Professionals in 2010, and also obtained my specialty certification in low vision from the American Occupational Therapy Association in 2010. And I've been practicing passionately in the field for several years now in different venues.
Elsa, how many of you in your degree doing what you do are in the state of New Jersey?
There are 2 occupational therapists who specialize in the field of low vision rehabilitation in New Jersey, myself and a colleague who is a certified low vision therapist.
So in the whole state,
Yes.
just 2. So it makes it even more extraordinary that we had the excellent opportunity to be connected with you. I hope you know, just for our family, you were one of the brightest spots for us in one of the hardest times of our lives. So you will always have that halo over your head in our hearts. Just want to put that out there for you.
Well, thank you.
Christine mentioned, yes, a very bright spot and, at a really difficult time. And Elsa, you're one of I think the few people, not just in the state, but I think one of the people every blind person in New Jersey should know or know about for certain. Um, I was very fortunate in many ways to get to know you. I think I had only been blind maybe a month when at that time you were still making house calls and coming to people's homes and helping them with things. And the whole idea of me starting over was an emotionally, but also just a practically challenging one. I realized I couldn't read, and prior to you coming, I'm like, what am I going to do? I knew that work wasn't a possibility, and I knew my life was really changing in ways that I didn't even realize. And you were somebody who came. You probably remember those times. We had gotten a used CCTV, and I had an iPad that I was able to get, and you began to teach me how to read again. And I can remember hearing myself read out loud. And, um, you know, not to brag, but like you, I have like a number of advanced degrees and from pretty good institutions. And to like reading like a second grader all over again was hard, but you were so hopeful and so encouraging. Um, and I know you do more than that. I remember I think you're the queen of hacking, you know, um, maybe next to my wife, she was taping coffee beans to our microwave on the 30-second and on and off button. And you told us that there
Peppercorns.
was peppercorns. Thank you. And you told us there's things, braille bumps and, you know, taking those paint stirrers as a way to kind of pull the oven open and, not burn yourself, all kinds of things. But for our listeners, tell us a little bit more. What does a CLVT do? What is the magic? behind what you do with people?
Yeah. So a certified low vision therapist evaluates somebody's needs, what's happening because of their vision loss. There's certain things we're aware of based on somebody's eye condition, what we might expect could be an issue for you, whether it's difficulty with central viewing tasks, peripheral viewing tasks, or just in general, your vision. So we are considered specialists in being able to look at your needs, look at your environment, be able to adjust your environment so that you're able to function as independently as possible in your environment, and also what you can do rehabilitatively on your own with guidance from a specialist in order to function more independently in your home and everyday life. So we really look holistically, and this is partly also being an occupational therapist. That's our training, is to look at somebody holistically. So it's also not only the physical aspects, but the emotional aspects. And as you just shared with us, the emotional adjustment to vision loss is such a big part of the journey.
Yeah, you were the very first support group that I attended ever, much less, for low vision. And I remember that day. Christine was there. She drove me. We were there together. But there was a sense of, I don't know, it just real, being in a room surrounded by blind people. I never met another blind person before. Um, what do you suppose is the magic of who you are and what you do? How does what you do, how is that influenced by just who you are as a person? Because there's a magic there that comes with the practical aspects of what you do. You're very skilled. You have creative ideas, but you just know how to figure out what somebody can see and make the most of it, so to speak. But at the same time, just the person that you are influences the work you do. There's an overlap and a connection that I feel. But just to ask you, what's that magic? What's inside of all that? How does that person that you are connect to what you do?
I think being a good listener and really listening to what somebody is saying to you is such a major part, central part of that equation. Um, Taking in all that they're sharing with you, being compassionate is a big part of it as well, and understanding someone's needs, and also just observational skills, looking at someone, watching what they're doing. How are they doing things? How are they turning their head? How are they moving their eyes? How are they, interacting with their environment? So I kind of take all those pieces together, and that's how I come up with a plan of what I'm going to do, and it's very individualized, and I meet each person where they're at. That's what I've to learn is really important. A person has to be emotionally and physically ready to accept that guidance as well. That's a big part of the equation as well. So it's really very individual. I very much approach everything from a client centered approach. So every person is unique and individual. Every person has their own unique set of goals of what they want to accomplish. So I really look at it from that standpoint. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? And how can we get you there?
Yeah.
It's my experience of you was pretty exceptionally grounded in the idea that you were like I want to say a safety net. I'm thinking of one of those tubes that a lifeguard throws you when you're drowning. You came into our home, and honestly, I have worked with occupational therapies in the past as a principal, helping our young people write or walk or whatever it is they need. But it never had affected me and my life in such a personal way. And quite literally, Sam and I were drowning because his blindness happened overnight. He went from being sighted one day and waking up blind the next, as you know. And I often wondered how you could just walk into my home, like you were Superwoman, and you came in and you knew like what to help us with because all of it was just hard. It was foggy. It was just really difficult to say, like, I don't even know where to begin. He doesn't know how to dress himself. He doesn't know he's tripping over coffee tables. He doesn't know how to read. How did you assess in looking at Sam or any client really with all the needs that might be
Mhm.
presenting and the emotions you just mentioned? How do you know where to start?
Well, I always start my evaluation with a very detailed interview. An evaluation is typically 90 minutes. I might spend the first 20 to 30 minutes just talking to somebody, getting to know them, finding out what's happening, hearing the background of what happened to them with their vision loss, what their life has been like, what kind of family support they have, what were they doing vocationally, what are their most immediate needs right now, what are their biggest frustrations. So I really take in the whole picture, and then I'd go through an evaluation, evaluating different aspects of a person's ability to function, which includes the reading skills, the writing skills, their ability to see contrast, the a person's eye movements. And then I do a whole what we call activities of daily living inventory. I ask a whole bunch of questions related to daily living activities to get a real picture of what somebody's life looks like. And then we go from there. So it's just one step at a time. You try to deal with the biggest priorities first to help someone function ind- as independently and safely as possible. Safety is a priority, and also addressing something that a person can be successful at immediately is important. Picking something that's achievable quickly, that someone can feel like they achieved, because that will build confidence for them, and that layer of confidence will help build on developing other skills too.
So, Elsa, given there are very few people who do this and you're a sighted
Mhm,
person, help
mhm.
me help other listeners know what brought you to this interest of working with those who are blind or low vision.
So I've always had a passion for helping people. That's part of what drew me to become an occupational therapist. When I was in undergraduate college, my grandfather had a stroke, and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do career wise. So my mother was the one who had suggested to me at the time to go with him on his therapies. So I went to a physical therapy appointment, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. And I was immediately drawn to occupational therapy as a career, which I pursued as a graduate degree. And then what really interested me then after that is when I launched into doing general rehabilitation, working with clients who've had recent strokes and brain injuries, trying to figure out what was going on with their vision. Obvious, more obvious from a physical standpoint to see somebody with a disability. In other words, if they're not able to move a limb, I can see that, and I'm going to help them with working on that and addressing those needs. But vision is not something you readily see, of course. It's what somebody tells you, and it's what you observe. So I found it to be a little bit of like detective work to kind of figure out what was happening in someone's vision. How are they using their vision? Why were they seeing something and not seeing something else? What they were describing to me. And I just found it really interesting to learn more about someone's visual function and how they were using their vision. So that's where it became a passion for me. So I really focused on vision rehab in the hospital that I was working at the time. And then that kind of sprungboard me, if you will, into the world of low vision rehabilitation. And that's where I've been exclusively focusing now for many years.
So, low vision is not something that I had ever heard of until I came into this world of low vision and blindness. So, for our listeners who aren't aware of what that is, can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So it's a good time to explain the difference between low vision and legal blindness, because you may hear both terms shared among people. Legal blindness is a government term, and it's basically denotes that someone has 20 over 200 vision or worse, and that would entitle that person to receive benefits through the government, if you will, through their itemized deductions each year when they file for taxes. So that is a government term, but it's not a medical term. Low vision is a medical term, and low vision designates somebody as having vision that is 20 over 70 or worse in the better seeing eye, and not correctable through optical correction, medical correction, or surgical correction. So when I say 20 over 70, what does that mean? What that means is somebody with intact vision, quote unquote, we'll say normal vision just for this definition of 20/20 vision, what they can see from 200 feet away. Somebody with low vision needs to be um, oh, sorry, let me correct this again. What they can see from 70 feet away, somebody with low vision can see from 20 feet away. So let's take 20 to over 200 as an example. What they can see from 200 feet away, somebody with low vision can only see from 20 feet away. So that denotes a comparison to the quote unquote normally sighted population.
Some of my experience of misconceptions with low vision. in the world, we've had people come up to Sam. Can you guess what I'm about to say? Can you guess? We've had people come up to Sam when he's taken out his iPhone and say to him, "You're not blind. You're not low vision. You're not blind. Um, you're looking at your phone. How is it possible?" Do you encounter that?
All the time. So a lot of people think of things as black and white. You're either blind or sighted, and they don't understand the world of low vision. And the interesting fact is, low vision makes up the majority of people with vision loss. I believe the statistic I last checked was 70 to 80% of people with vision loss have low vision, and those that are completely blind with no usable vision fall into the smaller category of maybe 20% of people at the most. So what's interesting is that people don't understand when somebody can see something and they don't see something else. I so vividly remember the story, and Sam knows this lovely woman that was in our low vision support group for many years. And she would describe at her Passover Seder table, being at her daughter-in-law's house, and she's everybody knows that she had vision loss. That was typically not contested, but then those situations would come up where she's looking down at the floor under the table and she sees a matzah crumb, literally a little crumb under the table, and her daughter and family exclaim, "How do you see that matzah crumb on the floor, but you can't see the food on your plate, or you can't see our faces?" And it's almost like people want to say you must be making it up, but I don't think they really mean that, but they just don't understand it. How do you see one thing in one scenario and you don't see it in other scenarios? And what they don't understand is people's vision is very fractured. It's almost like fractured glass, right? And they might have a piece that's still intact of glass. There might be a small little window of vision that's still intact. And it just happens to be whatever they're looking at that second in time fell in to that little area where they can see more clearly than somewhere else. And so what I do in occupational therapy is try to identify where those areas of clearer residual vision are and teach someone how to maximize the use of them and reliably find and utilize, access those areas of vision that are intact, if you will, versus a happenstance situation where they happen to find them. But yeah, it's very misunderstood, the idea of low vision out there in the world, and there's a lot of education that needs to be done around that.
Yeah. Yep. Elsie, you mentioned earlier the idea of people that in the low vision world, vision loss, being emotionally ready to receive instruction, guidance on using what's left and making strides. But if they're not emotionally ready, I encounter that, and as you know, I do a lot of volunteer work in the blind low vision community. And at least for me personally, I went through mourning more than just the loss of my vision. There was a lot of identity lost for me. Like symbolically, when I stopped working, I lost all that business card meant for me. And it was a real, it was a very difficult time. In your experience with clients over all these years that you've been working, what do you think is some of the magic of moving people through that stuckness, if you will, if that's a word, where they're just kind of, um, it's hard to get them through the depressive, the anxious, the whatever it is that's just keeping them stuck from growing and moving on with all that the vision loss community has to offer in terms of all the practical tips. We meet people commonly that just seem to be stuck in a sort of unreadiness emotionally to move that. What do you think is keeping them stuck, and what do you think is the thing that, or the things that help move them forward?
Well, as you all know, Sam, grief is several stages, and people can go through those several stages. They can cycle backwards, forwards, and go back to the beginning again at any time, those 7 stages of grief. And someone has to be at a point where they're ready to accept help and ready to make some changes. And if someone stays stuck in that cycle of still bargaining or just angry or just sad and not able to mobilize forward, it is really difficult to help somebody get to that next level until they're ready. I definitely direct people towards emotional support services such as Eye to Eye. I direct them towards low vision support groups to help them process through. As you well know, and we've both experienced being in a support group, people can be very helpful and well intentioned. And we've had this discussion before, but if you try to throw 10 or 15 resources somebody's way thinking you're being helpful to them, it may not be helpful to them if they're not ready to accept those resources because they're still emotionally processing their vision loss. Then they aren't. So I think it's just important to be there and listen to them and support them. When it comes to therapy, though, because it's a short-term service, if someone isn't really ready to receive help in low vision therapy, I have had to have that hard conversation, difficult conversation with someone and say, what I'm hearing from you is that, you're still processing through what's happened to you. You may not be ready for low vision occupational therapy right now, but I'm here and I'll be here when you're ready to come back to me and start therapy. I have had to let a few people go for therapy who just were not ready to move forward, taking steps to help themselves. And that's difficult to do that, but I have found it's necessary to do that. Because I've sometimes been on that receiving end of the anger and the frustration, and that's not helping anything either. So being as patient as possible is really important, being supportive. Not if someone is upset and you feel like it's misdirected towards you as a person, not accepting it that way, just understanding that where it's coming from is really important, and not contributing to the frustration in that way either by escalating it any more than it needs to escalate. So I think just being there and being supportive and letting someone know that you'll be there when they're ready is really important in that process. So, we have people in the low vision support group who come, and we have the best of intentions to help them get up and running with some solutions and strategies. And, I'm grateful when I see them return the next session. I'm like, oh, good, we didn't scare them away. But some of them don't come back. And I think it's because they did get overwhelmed and they feel like they're so far behind the eight ball because they haven't done ABC or XYZ that some people just stop coming to the support group. And that's tough too, because you really want to see everyone succeed. But everyone has to be in a place where they're ready to accept that support.
Yeah. And it's tricky too, at least it was for me, because while there were certainly times where I was there, like just low energy, depressed, not really hopeful, and probably not ready to receive services at times. However, in some of those early sessions with you, at least I was learning something, and that something provided just a little hope and a little movement into a world that, okay, it is clearly different than the world that I had, but I can still figure out a way to read. I can still figure out a way to, safely cook or get dressed. Or I can remember just some of the early things that you taught me to do, just finding my way around the house by different markers. Like, oh, here's a rug, and I know what that rug feels like. I know where I am in time and space. To this day, Christine will tell you, to the left of my sink, I have this little rubber mat, which I think Christine
It was a gift for me.
was a gift for you. It was for a curling iron to keep it from melting surfaces or something like that, right? I don't
It
know.
was. Yep.
But it's
Yep.
this little rubber mat. It's very tactile, and I don't know. It's like a little mouse pad. But I go and when I touch that, I know precisely. Now I've been practicing a while. Like, half turn here is, the sink, and another turn is the toothbrush and toothpaste. And if I go the other way to the left, are all these other things, and it's sort of like a home base. And even though I wasn't in the emotional readiness state to really move forward, at least that helped make me functional to some extent, right? And to that helped me make me beginning to feel more human again and like a person. And so I do think, like, even though there's this practical technical side to what you do, just little things, and that's where it gets tricky. Even though I wasn't emotionally ready, when I learned how to do some of those things, it helped the emotional readiness move forward and sort of
It
mature,
does.
because I started to feel like a human being again. Like, I don't have to ask for help with, where's the toothbrush and where's, how do I do this? And I can remember some of the most simple things, creative things like, well, if you can't see how much toothpaste Yeah, I remember you said there's blue toothpastes out there. Find the blue toothpaste. I remember that. Still use it. But like, even if that didn't work, hey, if it's just your tube of toothpaste, squirt a little in your mouth and then put the brush in.
Yep.
Like little silly things. That's like, okay, I don't have to ask my wife for help with brushing my teeth. Um, so those little things too, I think, have made such a huge difference for me, because you do continue the grief, as you well said, keeps cycling through a lot of the time. I found the support group to be probably one of the most important aspects of what I call my, I know you might use the word rehabilitation with blindness. I call it my recovery from blindness, low vision. It's what I call the journey of it. But the support group doesn't really feature, I mean, you're filled with resources. And when the topic comes up, we talk about this aspect of Elsa, like where all the letters after your name come from, right? But a lot of the time, it's just this who Elsa is as a person that makes the support group move forward and is magical. And I think what keeps many of us coming back. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said, well, who is this Elsa person? Thank you for sharing your story of your grandfather, because it starts to make sense where that place comes from in you and your why of doing this work to make a really an impactful difference in the lives of people. Because really, you're entering many people's lives, and probably, at least I hope, one of the most difficult. I hope there's nothing more difficult disease, but it's truly one of the most difficult things that happens to people when they lose vision. And so to be there and then help them move through that is just, I think, remarkable.
Well, I think our group is very special because of the members in it and who have formed a very tight connection with each other and very intersupportive of each other. And I just think that the magic is in the members of the group and the positive energy and chemistry that is generated within the group. So I feel like I take credit for the initial idea of starting a support group in 2010, but I feel
Yeah.
like after that, it really was taken over by the members that have come over the years and made such great contributions and connections with each other.
Elsa, I wanted to just switch the subject just slightly to
Sure.
talk a little bit about how difficult it is for um, it isn't easy for everyone who might want these services to get these services. And I don't mean that in terms of looking, look, it's Googling for you on the internet. I mean, Sam and I are, we have advanced degrees. We have great health insurance. We live in a great community. We have a support system ourselves of other family members, oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles of resources. It's very likely that someone in Sam and I's position are going to find you quicker than someone who doesn't have the financial resources or the support networks or all of that. The things that create the privilege for us to be able to get to you. Um, do you come across some of those situations where people you wish could get to you but don't know how to? Or are there populations you wish were more served? Or is there an area of that maybe our listeners would want to know about?
Sure. I think in general, and I can only speak to the state of New Jersey, and Sam and I have had these conversations before, but services are very much offered in a silo in New Jersey. There's no guidebook or handbook to give to any one person who's experiencing vision loss and say, okay, you have a eye condition, a progressive eye condition. These are the places you need to contact. These are the steps you need to take to get help for yourself. So we oftentimes find people who are just looking for resources out there. So they might find myself or my organization, Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey, through an internet search. Um, Maybe it's mentioned by a physician's office, but there's no guidance for people to know exactly who they need to call and what help is available to them. So oftentimes we might be a first phone call, and I'll immediately say to someone, did you register with the New Jersey Commission for the Blind? You must register as a client with them. You'll need a letter from your physician to qualify you for services. We provide services on site here in Denville, in independent living skills, technology, and holistic wellness. And then we also provide a whole array of uh, virtual classes that are offered over Zoom, both weekly classes and meditation and yoga and fitness, and then other opportunities with speaking engagements. And then there's low vision occupational therapy. And because, as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm one of two, most people don't find me with intention unless they specifically know to research low vision occupational therapist. And then I'm one of the two that will pop up. And sometimes people will call us just because they looked up knowing that an OT might be able to address low vision needs. So, the good news is I do accept insurance, and we are looking for funding to support being able to provide services to people who do not have insurance. And we're in the process of looking for funding right now for that. So it is difficult for people sometimes to navigate, if you will, the system. It's not, it kind of works outside of the general healthcare system where it should not, but it's not really integrated. So somebody might see their retina specialist and they might see their general ophthalmologist. Maybe somebody suggested them that they need to see a low vision specialist. Everyone with an eye condition that should have a low vision specialist that they see as well on their team. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So I become one of those members of just getting on the phone with people and just giving them education. Most of the time they're in state. Sometimes they're very far from our location, which makes it difficult if they're in central or southern Jersey. With the way transportation works, they might as well be on the other side of the
Mm,
country, the way
yep.
transportation services operate. It's not always convenient for people to get to us, even if they're within the state. So we tend to serve on site. Most people are within the North Jersey counties. So anyone in central and southern Jersey, when they call and they're looking for a resource similar to what I do, unfortunately, I don't have anyone to recommend to them, which is disappointing that there aren't other providers that do similar work to what I do. And as Sam mentioned, I did provide home services before. I'm not currently providing home care services, but stay tuned. We're also working on a grant to fund having an occupational therapist start to provide home care services. So we see the needs. It's just a matter of meeting the needs. So we're working on creating new programs to try and meet those needs.
Are there universities that are training up students that if our listeners have an interest in the field or they have children in their home, they want to encourage to go into it, that you can recommend?
Absolutely. So there's 4 universities that I'm familiar with that have low vision certification programs at this time. Salus University, which is in the Philadelphia area, University of Alabama at Birmingham, which is where I graduated from, University of Western Michigan, and then University of Washington. Those are the 4 schools I'm aware of that have a low vision certification program. And I believe, well, some of them are specifically geared towards someone already being an occupational therapist, such as University of Alabama at Birmingham. The other schools, I'm not sure. I know Salus, you do not need to have a background as an occupational therapist. So you can choose to go into the blindness field without being an occupational therapist. The difference is right now, the way insurance works, occupational therapists are the recognized providers of low vision rehabilitation for reimbursement.
Got it. Got it.
I see. And that might shine some light on why there's so few, because you have to go through OT, then get the special certification as sort of a graduate program. Hence, why there's maybe just a few um, in New Jersey.
Well
And
said.
who are you employed by, really, if you're not in private? And the commission, which probably has just a certain number of employees, is that probably accurate throughout the United States in terms of like the availability of jobs and maybe why there's not as many people heading into it?
That's a big part of it. Some states have more opportunities than others, depending on how the blindness system is set up. If there's universities that offer services as well, the state commission services are decentralized in other states, so there's more agencies and organizations that are part of the Commission for the Blind in that respective state providing services. So there are more opportunities for occupational therapists to become providers in other states. Interesting note, my colleague here that we referenced at the beginning of our time together, she was a blindness professional. She started out as a certified low vision therapist. She went to school and got a master's in occupational therapy so she could continue to bill for services. So she and I came from opposite paths from each other, which is really interesting. And we're both credentialed now to provide low vision services as occupational therapists.
Interesting. Interesting.
Mhm.
It's a similar pathway in the field of autism in New Jersey with occupational becoming what's called a BCBA and so forth with
Okay.
the acceptability of insurance, which is a rather new thing
Hmm.
in the state of New Jersey with that field, similar with blindness, low vision.
Hmm.
I have an out there kind of question. Do you mind if I ask you, Elsa?
Go for it.
She's thinking, you can ask me. I'm not going to answer it necessarily. Uh, all right. So, what's the craziest OT help you ever got a request for? I mean, did somebody want to jump out of a plane? Did you have a client that thought he might or she might want to try something wild that you know, had a little hesitation about?
Oh, you hit me with a really good one. I was not prepared for that one.
Mm.
Um, I can't think of any offhand. Of course, I'll get it off this call with you this evening, and I'm sure something will flood my mind. But no, nothing outlandish. Most people have pretty reasonable goals to accomplish. I'd say the most unreasonable goals sometimes are if they come to me and say they want to be able to drive again, or they want to drive better. And, they may not meet the requirements of the state to drive, which is well beyond my capabilities. And I'm not a certified driving training instructor. So, that's not my area of
So, you're
expertise.
not going down mountains or in kayaks or river rafting or horseback riding, occupational therapist.
No, I've had some people involved in sports, let's say golf, who want to be able to track the ball in flight, you know, or maybe want to resume tennis and keeping track of the ball. But anything with velocity and speed is really difficult to train because, one of the things I train, as I mentioned before, is helping someone find and use that better area of vision. And I can teach them to track, but it's usually not something as moving as swiftly as a golf ball in space. So, you know, those types of requests tend to be something, unfortunately, I'm not able to accommodate. But there are other strategies out there. If you're willing to invest the expense for an auditory golf ball, you can get one. But when that golf ball goes into that sand pit or that lagoon of water, that's, a pretty hefty investment you just lost.
Mhm.
Speaking, I think Elsa, this might have been on one of the calls on our support group, where the topic of and it's probably a good thing you don't work in these states in Georgia, and I think it's also in Texas and maybe some other states where it is legal for blind people to own and carry and fire a weapon. And speaking of like unusual training requests, not from me. I mean, I have a healthy fear of guns in the first place, but when I heard that, I don't know if that was on our support group, I was just flabbergasted. Like, this is one of the things you just shouldn't do, in my opinion. But I guess, but that would be a very unusual request to have to. Can you please train me to shoot a firearm?
So I did just have a gentleman a few months ago
Well, here it
who,
is.
yeah, I get maybe that's the story,
There it
but I did
is.
have a gentleman a few months ago, a retired school principal, and he wanted to be able to see sheet music, to play music. He played a few instruments and also be able to shoot his gun. And he already owned his guns, and he wanted to be able to at least get to the range and practice shooting again. If you are a legal gun owner and you own a gun, there's no qualifying factor or organization that's going to come and take that gun from you. But you are obviously held responsible for using it safely, of course. So this gentleman, I was looking up some organizations to provide some type of service or training to him. And as you mentioned, and that did come up on our group call, I did research an organization down in either Georgia or Florida, which is probably not surprising to many, that did have an organization that will teach shooting to someone with vision loss. So I did give the gentleman that resource. My husband, who's also a police officer, provided me some suggestions and resources for him for when he goes to the range, and some strategies as far as because it was issues too with being able to, the better vision was in the opposite eye to the hand that he shoots with, and being able to try to line up safely, and some different strategies that he could use. um, so I haven't followed up with him on that since then, but yeah, that was a little bit out of the box for me as far as normal requests in the
Right,
past.
right, yeah,
Wow.
unbelievable. Who knew that there were organizations with this sort of sector and this interest area to address the needs of blind, visually impaired people? Who knew?
And there are adventure groups out there. There's adaptive blind skier organizations and other outdoor groups that you can call and go to different parts of the country, and they will do skills training with you, or you might even perform that sport or activity in tandem with an instructor that's with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Funny
so
that you
they're
mentioned
all,
that. I have
yeah.
as you know, I have a all men's support group with that I run through the Aspire program with the commission, and brought up this idea. There's an organization in Oregon that does all this outdoor adventure for the blind, visually impaired, and unanimously, all our wives want us to go for the week. They just want to get rid of us and have somebody else take care of us as we float down a river. you know, so yeah, I'm looking into that. I'll report back, but we're looking into
Excellent.
that kind of thing. It's kind of a
We had a guest speaker last year,
uh,
Lonnie Bedwell.
yo,
I don't.
yes, yes,
Yes.
I was
So he floated down. I forget which river it was, but it's in the Grand Canyon. Um,
the
I forget the
Colorado
name of that.
River, which has
The
some
Colorado. Okay, it was
significant
it was the
rapids.
Colorado River.
Yeah,
Yeah, he floated down that river and shared all sorts of pictures and video of his adventure. And he is right now heading out to Nepal, and he's getting ready to climb Mount Everest. And he will be returning in the fall
unbelievable.
to present. So he'll be back. I think we're locking in on September for him to present. So you'll definitely want to attend to
He
that
that
one.
was
So.
probably one of the most just incredible stories to hear, like what he does and
Mhm.
how he just overcomes fear and just has a go. It's just incredible.
He's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
was a neat
summited
guy.
Mount Denali later last year, so he's just always on a different adventure.
Yeah,
It's like the other end of the idea that you were talking about. Some people are, at the beginning of that journey, and then you have others who are climbing, scaling mountains, with vision loss. It can cover all kinds of experiences for people. It's really unbelievable. And to think that what you're helping others do is just to live a fuller and healthier life has got to be, it's satisfying for me to watch. I can only imagine how it can feel for you to experience that firsthand.
so Elsa, Christine and I, well, I was a former educator. Christine currently still is. We, from time to time, will share memories of students that we've had that may have had a really rough year, a rough time, and we helped a family, helped a student overcome something. And it's, and sometimes when I have rainy days and I think back to those memories and how impactful they were and how fulfilling it was for me. And I used to say, I used to come home to Christine and say, this is better than any paycheck. This is why we got into it. Do you have a story of anybody that you like, one that kind of reoccurs that you go back to that you made that kind of difference with? That's your kind of rainy day moment that you need when you need to pick me up?
I think of the people that I used to do home visits with that lived alone and had very little family support. And I mean, it seemed like I was such a bright spot to knock on their door. And they were so grateful for the therapy, but even more so, I think they were grateful that someone came to their home and cared, and was there.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes I'd have to remind them, well, I am here to do therapy with you. So I can't put a specific one face to it because there was a lot of scenarios where that happened, where they were
Yeah.
just so grateful. And they want to be so hospitable to you and serve you coffee or tea and a snack. They really want to be able to show show that hospitality to you and just have you be there and be company to them. So I really find it very rewarding to be able to even just emotionally be there for them, and it may not even have been anything specific that I did rehabilitative wise that made a difference for them that day or that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready for the fast five. Are
Oh
you
boy.
ready?
All right. Fasten your seatbelt, Elsa.
All right, these are just
Okay.
5 questions, and just whatever comes to mind, feel free to share, okay? Not a lot of thought
Mhm.
has to go into this. All right, what's a song you cannot live without?
Marshmallow, happier.
I love that song. All right, what type of animal are you most like?
Oh, well, so my name is Elsa the Lioness. Well, my name is Elsa Zavoda, of course, but my name is from Elsa the Lioness Born Free. So I always consider my little nickname Lioness. And that's because of the symbolism of my name coming from the movie Born Free. And I was named Elsa because my mother appreciated the symbolism from the movie of this couple finding this stray lioness cub, raising this lioness cub to become an adult and becoming independent, and then setting her free into the wild to live her own life. So I really, to this day, appreciate that messaging, especially having lost my mom young. That story and that sentiment has stayed with me through a lifetime.
That's beautiful. Would you rather win a house or a car?
A house.
Guide dog or a cane?
Well, I'd have to say both in my career, because I just appreciate so much what guide dogs can do. Not only from the service that they offer, but the companionship and the connection that I see that the owners make with the guide dogs. But no, and Sam knows this, guide dog owner or not, you must have proficient cane skills.
Absolutely.
You can't just, one is not exclusive of, well, you can be a cane user exclusively and not having a guide dog, but you cannot have a guide dog and not be a cane user. So you'd have to say both.
So for those of us who aren't sure why can't you have a cane, not be a proficient cane user? Indulge
Sure.
me.
So when you are using a guide dog, the guide dog is trained visually and auditorily to do certain activities. The guide dog is not trained tactily, if you will. So the guide dog has a way of functioning. And I learned this when I went to a course last year. I found it really interesting. So a guide dog operates one way, but a guide dog is not going to tell you that there's a crack in the sidewalk or an uneven sidewalk or a small obstacle sticking out. But the guide dog's going to just maneuver you through a path. Um, so when you're using a cane, you're able to detect more details and features of what's happening around you. So whereas the guide dog is visually navigating for you and learns a path to take you on, the cane is what gives you, as the owner of that cane, the direct feedback for navigating, being able to safely detect obstacles and orienting yourself. So that's why it's important to know both.
Super interesting. And two more. The hardest food you think for a blind person to eat?
I would say peas.
That's a good one. I
and
didn't think of
and
that.
soup.
Soup is, yeah.
Peas. Okay. And finally, if you could have one superpower aside from the ones you currently have,
No
we
superpowers
we
here.
we beg to differ. What would it be?
Oh, that's the one that stumped me. Of all those questions, look at that.
Mm.
Um, One superpower is if I could fix things for people and make everything okay. That would be it. If I could just rectify things immediately and make it okay for somebody, I wish I could do that.
There you have it, folks.
Well, that would be great, but then we wouldn't grow. It's part of the
This is
struggle, and
true.
that might be a nice segue into a future episode. Can we count on you, Elsa, to come back and be a guest at some point in the
Absolutely.
future? Wonderful.
Sure, of course.
Wonderful. And thank you for sharing the story of your name, but more importantly, thank you for living up to all that your name embodies. I think that was remarkable for your mother to have that foresight into what her daughter would be in the world, and most especially for people with such profound loss, such as vision, to be the Elsa that we all should know. So
Aw,
thank
thank
you.
you, Sam. Get me
Thank
a little
you.
teary-eyed over here.
Thank you for joining us. Is there anything that maybe you wanted to mention or say that we didn't get the opportunity to ask?
Um, if I could put a plug in for my great organization that I've been with for almost 7 years, Vision Loss Alliance of New Jersey. We are a not-for-profit organization. This is our 80th year. We're very excited to share. We serve adults with vision loss and blindness. We are located in Denville, New Jersey, which is Morris County. We provide in-person services, as I mentioned, in independent living skills, technology, and holistic wellness. But we also offer a vast array of virtual programs. They are all grant funded, free of charge to attend. They're done over the Zoom platform. So if you go to our website, www.vlanj.org, you can learn more information about our programs, who we are, and then also the links to register for all of our great Zoom programs that are available.
Thank you, Elsa. Thank you for joining us today. It was our pleasure to be in your company. And thank you for taking the time out of your night to be with us.
Yes,
My
thank
pleasure.
you,
Thank
Elsa.
you. You're very welcome.